Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. I am Hanan Kado from BSed Mathematics. So now we are going to proceed with the case study number 4. Where and when did the cry of rebellion happen? But before that, what is cry of rebellion means? Or did you hear this word? I know that all of you has a prior knowledge about what is the cry of rebellion. The cry of rebellion is come from a Spanish word El Grito de Rebelión, which means cry of rebellion. El Grito de Rebelión refers to a decision or call to revolt. It doesn't necessarily mean shouting, unlike the term or the Filipino term sigaw. So now we know that the cry of rebellion is come from a Spanish word. But the crying and the rebellion is not literally means an act of crying and an act of rebellion. But instead, it is the start where all Filipinos are reunited and realize that they must need to have a revolution in order to have a freedom in life and a freedom from government. Now, where and when did the cry of rebellion happen? In the Philippines, this happened in August 1896 in northeast of Manila, where they declared rebellion against the Spaniards' colonial government. These events are important markers in the history of colonies that struggled for their independence against their colonizer. During the Spaniards' colonialization, Philippines is under control by Spaniards and Philippines have no freedom at all. So, during that time, Dr. Jose Rizal, our national hero, was already passed away. And the rest leaders, including Emilio Aguinaldo, the leader of the Katipunan, Andres Bonifacio, and the rest of the leader who is alive, was declared to conduct a huge meeting, and they declared to have a revolution against the Spaniards. And during that day, the cry of rebellion was happened. A prominent Filipino historian, Teodoro Agoncillo, emphasized the event when Bonifacio tore cedula or tax receipt before the Katipuneros, who also did the same. So according to a Filipino historian, Teodoro Agoncillo, he said that Andres Bonifacio tore the cedula or tax receipt on that day, on the day of cry of rebellion, as a sign of a revolution. According to some writers, on the day of the cry, Emilio Aguinaldo gave his permission to sing or commission to sing the Himnon de Balintawak just to inspire and heal the grieving heart of the soldiers after the Pack of Biak na Bato failed. So now, the monument of our heroes of 1896 was now located at the center of the EDSA Avenue and Andres Bonifacio Drive North Diversion Road. So it became the intersection of the two roads. It was found at their center. So from then on until 1962, the Cry of Balintawak was celebrated every 26th of August. So now let's proceed to the different dates and places of the cry. So there are various accounts of the cry given with the different dates and places according to our sources. So one of our sources is a Guardian Civil Lieutenant Olegario Diaz. He identified that the cry to have happened in the Balintawak on 25 August 1896. Another one is Teodoro Calao. He is a Filipino historian, and according to him, the cry of Balintawak was happened in Kangkong, Balintawak on the last week of August 1896. So according to Teodoro Calao, he cited a specific place where in Kangkong, Balintawak, but he has no specific date because according to him, it was happened on last week of August 1896. Another one is Santiago Alvarez. He is a Katipunero and son of Mariano Alvarez. Mariano Alvarez is a leader of the Magdiwang faction in Cavite. So, Santiago Alvarez is a Katipunero, and when we say Katipunero, he is a soldier under Andres Bonifacio's faction. So according to Santiago Alvarez, The cry of Balintawak was happened in Bahay Toro in Quezon City on August 24, 1896. So, Alvarez is more specific than the other. Another one who gave accounts is Pio Valenzuela, known as Katipunero and privy to Manay events concerning the Katipunan state at the cry happened in Pugad, Lawin on August 23, 1896. So according to Pio, the cry was happened in Pugad, Lawin. So again, there is no specific place, but he has a specific date. It is on August 23, 1896. There's also another historian who gave accounts about the cry. So he is historian Gregorio Zaide, identified the cry to have happened in Balintawak on August 1896. So there's no specific date again. While Teodoro Agoncillo put it at Pugad, Lawin on August 23, 1896, according to statement by Pio Valenzuela. There is also three historians who gave a specific dates and place about the cry, and they are Milagros Guerrero, Emmanuel Encarnacion, and Ramon Villegas. Those three claim that the event took place in Tandang Soras Barn in Gulod, Barangay Banlat, Quezon City on August 1896. So, as you observe, those three put a specific place, but there is no specific date. Now let's proceed, or let us know who are those primary source of the account of the cry, meaning those information about the cry. When we say primary source, this person are maybe on that day of the cry of rebellion, they were there, or they are the true witness of the cry of rebellion. So that's why they are called primary source. The first person who is considered as a primary source of the information about the cry of Balintawak is Mr. Guillermo Masangkay. This information can be found in his book entitled Cry of Balintawak and in the book of Gregoria Zaide and Sonia Zaide entitled Documentary Sources of the Philippine History, Volume 8 in Manila National Bookstore, and published on 1990, page 307 to 309. Now let me read this personal information given by Mr. Guillermo Masangkay. On August 26, a big meeting was held in Balintawak at the house of Apolio Samson, the then cabeza of that barrio of Caloocan, Aguedo del Rosario, Tomas Remigio, Brico Pantas, Teodoro Plata, Pio Valenzuela, Enrique Pachero, and Francisco Carrion. They were all leaders of the Katipunan and composed of the board of directors of the organization. Delegates from Bulacan, Cabanatuan, Cavite, and Morong were also present. About 9 o'clock in the morning of August 26, the meeting was opened with Andres Bonifacio presiding and Emilio Jacinto acting as secretary. The purpose was to discuss when the uprising was to take place. Teodoro Plata, Brico Pantas, and Pio Valenzuela were all opposed to start the revolution too early. Andres Bonifacio, sensing that he would lose in the discussion, then left the session hall and talked to the people who were waiting outside for the meeting of the leaders. He told the people that the leaders were arguing against starting the revolution early and appealed to them in a fiery speech in which he said, "You remember the fate of our countrymen who were shot in Bagumbayan. Should we return now to the towns, the Spaniards will only shoot. Our organization has been discovered and we're all marked men. If we don't start the uprising, the Spaniards will get us anyway. What then do you say?" "Revolt!" the people shouted as one. Bonifacio then asked the people to give a pledge that they were to revolt. He told them that the sign of slavery of the Filipino were sick. The cedula tax charged each citizens. "If it is true that you are ready to revolt, I want to see you destroy your cedulas." It will be a sign that all of us have declared our severance from the Spaniards. Another person who is considered as a primary source of the accounts of Cry is Mr. Pio Valenzuela. This information can be found on his book entitled Cry of Pugad Lawin in Gregorio Zaide and Sonia Zaide, Documentary Source of the Philippine History, Volume 8, that can be found in Manila Bookstore, National Bookstore, published on 1990, page 301 to 302. So this is Mr. Pio Valenzuela's statement. The place of refuge of Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, Procopio Bonifacio, Teodora Planta, Aguedo de Rosario, and myself was Balintawak, the first 5 arriving there on August 19, and I on August 20, 1896. The first place where some 500 members of the Katipunan met on August 22, 1896 was the house and yard of Apolinario Samson at Kangkong. Aside from the persons mentioned above, among those who were there were Bricio Pantas, Alejandro Santiago, Ramon Bernardo, Apolonio Samson, and the others. Here views only exchanged and no resolution was debated or adopted. It was at Pugad Lawin, the storehouse and yard of Juan Ramos, son of Melchora Aquino, where over 1,000 members of the Katipunan met and carried out considerable debate and discussion on August 23, 1896. The discussion was on whether or not the revolution against the Spaniards' government should be started on August 29, 1896. After the tumultuous meeting, after the long discussion and a hot debate between those leaders, including the soldiers of the Katipunan, many of those present tore their cedula certificate. So they destroy their cedulas in front of those leaders and shouted, "Long live the Philippines! Long live the Philippines!" So this is where and when did the cry of rebellion happen. This is the starting of freedom and independence in the Philippines. So now, did you observe that using the primary and secondary sources of accounts or the information, there are 4 places have been identified: the Balintawak, the Kangkong, the Pugad Lawin, and the Bahay Toro, while the dates are vary. It is on August 23, August 24, August 25, or August 26, 1896. So there are many dates and places according to those source of informations. So why do you think there are many places and many dates according to our primary and secondary sources? So the reason is, according to Guerrero, Encarnacion, and Villegas, all these places are in Balintawak, the part of Caloocan now in Quezon City. As for the dates, Bonifacio and his troops may have been moving from one place to another to avoid being located by the Spanish government, which could explain why there are several accounts of the cry. This is the summary of our long discussion about where and when did the cry of rebellion happen. So we considered the 2 important person who is considered as a primary source of the accounts or the information about the cry of rebellion. These are Mr. Guillermo Masangkay at Mr. Pio Valenzuela. Also, those who are secondary sources, including Encarnacion, Villegas, and Guerrero, and there are many more. But those 3 give us the reason why there are many dates and places of the cry of rebellion. So according to them, the reason why there are many places and dates of the cry is that Andres Bonifacio, together with his troops, are moving from one place to another day by day in order to avoid being located by the Spaniards government. Thank you so much.